you guys are showing up and you're showing these people who believe that they're free just how trapped they are. And that doesn't tend to go down well. And I think even, just now someone asked, I made a post on LinkedIn yesterday that talked about essentially like what happens when, and language here becomes tricky, but what happens when one shifts into what I call the resonance shift, or one moves into this field of creation, aliveness, other words we put on a thing that doesn't really have any.
Yeah.
And they asked if do we step into this field, or does the illusion of a separate self fade away? And I thought that's a really good question to live inside, because it seems to me a lot of people have now answered that question. And it's quite common, or at least in the the world in which I inhabit. It's now quite common, to speak about the illusion of a separate self. But I find the question much more interesting.
How are you, lovely Anthony, dear friend? Hi. What happened?
I said, what's going on? You're like, the sound's not working, and you just weren't saying anything.
You put a face.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. Just so perfectly, just when you start recording, I'm like,
yes, you put a face. Very authentic. Very you.
definitely not planned.
How are you doing? How are you?
Yeah.
Nice. It's really, I love to see you. Last time I saw you in person, it was
Yeah.
already 2 years ago.
I know.
We didn't meet before. We just met in Barcelona in person. And it was very, very, very beautiful, nice, and expansive with you, because you are full of such, I don't know, wisdom and insights and so many things. So very nice.
Okay. Try.
Yes. And today I was now just quickly checking your LinkedIn profile. I never prepare nothing in advance, and plus because I know you a little bit here, but I was just so delighted to see how aligned you are with me, or I am with you in everything, and at least in what you write. And also, yes, I know you a little bit from that afternoon, but yes. So I'm really excited to have you here, co-creating with me.
What was your verdict?
Of what?
Did we seem aligned from the things I have, the words that appear on the screen in front of you on a thing called LinkedIn?
Yes, we are aligned. We are very aligned.
No.
We are not here to create anything that already exists. or based on the current system, we have tried it all because we've been there. We have been following guidelines, but it's not for us to be there and follow any guidelines. It's for us to be who we are. And in my case, what I say, to be who we are and create what we love, and that's uniqueness, and that's outside any box. Yes. Mm. I love that. It's difficult to show that, no? To explain it to people that still are following the box.
Well, I mean, first of all, no one tends to think, or it seems to be rare to think or to believe that you are living inside a box. You know,
Yeah.
even when as what one does is you know, if you follow the trends of things, or you follow fashions, or you look for leaders, or any of these things, you yeah, you don't seem to to feel that, or to recognize that. And you you know, there's if you're familiar with the, you know, the classic film Easy Rider, and the guy walks in, that, you know, they're in this bar, and they get like a bunch of abuse basically, and you know, like, what's going on? So, well, you know, you guys are showing up, and you're showing these people who believe that they're free just how trapped they are.
Mm.
And that doesn't tend to go down well.
Mm-mm.
And I think, even, I mean, just now, someone asked, I made a post on LinkedIn yesterday
Mm-hmm.
that talked about essentially like what happens when, and language here becomes tricky, but what what happens when one shifts into what I call the, like, what I call the resonance shift, or one moves into this field of creation, aliveness, other words we put on a thing that doesn't really have any.
Yeah.
And they asked if you know, do we step into this field, or does the illusion of a separate self fade away? And I thought that's a really good question to live inside, because it seems to me a lot of people have now answered that question. And it's quite common,
Mm-hmm.
or at least in the you know, the world in which I inhabit. It's now quite common, you know, to speak about the illusion of a separate self. But I find the question much more interesting than an answer. Because also, you know, I've met, there's also an idea which I actually saw someone write about today, that the seeing the illusion of the thinking mind or the separate self or whatever you want to term you want to give to that. It's like, you know, it's like the solution to all the world's problems. And yet I know people who teach this understanding of the relationship between consciousness, mind, and thought to multinational companies looking for the next drug, which to me, you know, perhaps there is a place for that, right? Perhaps it has its use somewhere, but it just doesn't. I think there's this idea that if one sees the through the so-called illusion of separateness, that then one, you know, automatically start, you know, creating a more beautiful, holistic, say, you know, distributed world or society. And yet there are people who, you know, there are CEOs of multinational organizations who would, which organizations that would seem, from at least the vantage point I look at on life, to engage in activities that are not so beneficial for humanity and the planet, who are familiar now with these like ideas of non-self. And so, I mean, I guess what I'm pointing to is that there's a, you know, it's yes and perhaps like that's not, maybe that is like one thing, but I still actually I can't really say that I've answered that question. I've I've seen it answered. You know, it's been answered by many, you know, spiritual teachers who, and but usually people who either um, have, you know, lived in a different time and space, and perhaps, you know, it's fine because if it's a universal principle or awareness of being aware. And I agree that the way that most of us think about how life takes place through, say, principles of cause and effect may not be as fundamental as we've been led to believe, unless it gets put within to the terms of that one is the cause, and then the effects of being that cause start to show up as you know, life creates itself moment to moment, and then your, you know, your frequency or your consciousness is the thing responsible for whatever
Goes
comes.
up. Yeah.
If indeed the world is a mirror of that.
Yeah. Yeah. And what you were saying with the part of the corporations and the idea that they are teaching or contracting people to teach, that at the end it's mental. It stays mental, at mental level. until you don't experience, no, this separation.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. I think it most of the people that I am familiar with who teach or live these principles, to me they're operating from really high. You can logic non-self.
Mm-hmm.
It's rationally, you can rationally investigate the
Mm-hmm.
idea
Yeah.
of uh there being you can find out, right?
Yeah.
You can find out, you can ask, who am I, or uh, um some other good questions like, what is a thought?
Mm-hmm.
And you can go into that and logic your way to an understanding. And for me, understanding is a really nice foundation to leap from. Reason is a very good base to explore the adventure and what it means to embody
Mm-hmm.
uh this, embody, I think you've got in the back something called ove,
No, lab.
a quality called ove. I like it. Is it like love?
It's lab.
Ove.
Yes. You know what, Anthony, these days, talking about the separate self and all those things, no, these days I was asking myself, because, well, I'll tell you what I was asking, but it has to do because I've been looking into out of body experiences, no, and I had one when I was 17, and then
Okay.
also, no, to to discover more about my higher self or about who I am and other things. No, that there's Darius J. Wright that
Mm.
is teaching how to get out of the body and so to experience as a soul, which seems to be very, very like yourself exploring. No, you are very conscious about those things. But for me, and my question and the way I see it is that I don't have to exit the body to bring in my higher self into this body. So to embody the higher self and to really be it here in on earth
Yeah.
with everything that it has, all the knowledge, all the gifts and all the things. I know I have to evolve into that, but I'm feeling that we are capable of doing that, and that's the way we're also changing. Firstly, we change our outside because we change our inside, no? And we live from the inside out, and we are the example we want to see. But when you are open-hearted, you live in the moment, every time you're more connected to whatever it is. And as you are more connected to whatever it is, you start embodying whatever it is. And through that, you start changing here, no, and changing also your vibration and all those things. And every time, less and less looking into the current status quo, living by the current status quo, because you know there's much more, and we all are limitless potential.
Yeah. And then, I mean, there's the idea again that the more, I mean, I think it really depends on a number of factors with because there's an idea that the more one embodies limitless potential,
Mhm.
the greater the impact. And there's, with that at a certain level of awareness or consciousness on, people who have made a scale of such things, say that like one's radiance
Mhm.
essentially is able to absorb the, you know, lower frequencies of different consciousness bands of where most
Yeah.
people stay and live. And then they also say in terms of um there's an idea which I don't know if ever has been what's the word, properly evidenced, but the idea is that the more um one moves up an evolutionary spiral in terms of your worldview,
Mhm.
the more power and influence
Mm.
that has.
Mhm.
And then obviously then there becomes a question of how does one enable that
Yeah.
from another, from like the fundamental perspective. There's two ways of thing. There's like the question of how does one facilitate transformation within the world, and then you can say, well, that's a false question.
Mhm.
For there is no world.
Mhm. Yes.
But what is this world that you
Yeah.
speak of? Um, that's a fun one.
Yes. That's the baseline.
Yeah,
Yes. For me, well, there's many theories, no, of what the world is, and it's for me, it's really created through who I am, so with the perceptions I have. And maybe if it's an illusion, well, it has been demonstrated. No, we where we focus our mind, we are creating. Where we focus with our brain, we are creating what there is. No, so in observation, when we observe, things behave differently. No, that's the double split experiment. No, that when you observe, it changes the way that the particles are behaving. So it seems, I've been reading this week, it seems it happens in everything, no? So really if that's the case, where we put our focus, our observation, we are creating. So we are creating our world. We're creating this illusion, this world.
yeah. We can say that there are a number of potential timelines might
Mm-hmm.
come to experience, and ultimately the timeline that we will the one that will appear will be the one that the most has the most resonance. And I like this idea because it is open to the possibility that it's not a democracy.
Mm-hmm.
um it's not the number of votes, it's the
Mm-hmm.
quality of the voting
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
that counts. And that
True.
gives life to the opportunity to, for want of a better word, because it's just strange. All these terms become very strange when one talks about
Yeah.
such. You're
It's
like, it's
limiting.
like the opportunity. Like, how do you develop limitless consciousness? You know, if that,
Limitless.
you know, the entire uh the entire field is like unlimited. So,
Mm-hmm.
oh, here's a practice to develop. It's very,
No.
very, uh, it's a very strange thing, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But certainly, from a certain point of view, you know, because I think at least I don't know if it's your experience,
Uh-huh.
but from my experience, I tend to, you know, there tends to be quite a bit of perspective that comes that says like, you know, I'm wearing this bodysuit
Mm-hmm.
and and I have certain, this bodysuit has certain characteristics and a personality, and it's useful to get involved in that, even if it's a fabrication.
Mm-hmm.
And so from that point of view, it's um you know, it's quite useful to then be like, well, how what action can we take to offer the greatest probability of continuing on the most like optimal beneficial timelines?
Mm-hmm.
Because, you know, I like that, at least for the, you know, the how do we say, the life that I have left to experience in this body, and also I'd like, you know, the at least, you know, my daughter to have a nice, I'd like to have the nice, her to have a nice life.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that would be at least fun for her to experience.
Yeah. For sure. For sure. It's also, you were saying developing. How do we develop a higher consciousness or high conscious or a limitless potential? I think at the end, it's not that we develop it, we already have it. No, it's how we tap into it.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is some how can we say, um in order to leave the self behind,
Mm-hmm.
it is very useful to create a very strong sense of self.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah. Yeah.
At least, you know, I've had numerous experiences, or where you know, it is apparently through a number of experiences that I had, my, you know, I became quote unquote enlightened, and my consciousness went into a non-dual state,
Mm-hmm.
of which in order to stabilize that took, you know, has probably taken around a decade
Yeah.
for whatever um stage or of consciousness I might be up on a scale for that to stabilize. So there's a very interesting book by a guy called Ramaji,
Mm-hmm.
and he wrote a book called 1000, and it's based on the um so Dr. David Hawkins created this scale of 1,000 of consciousness, and he named
Mm-hmm.
all of these terms from shame all the way up to enlightenment, going through, fear, courage, willingness, understanding, love, joy, peace, and then enlightenment. And the thing I found interesting, or one thing I found very interesting about that, is that there's a scale from 0 to 1,000, and 700 to 1,000 is just enlightenment.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think from that, there's a very nice potential, right, for to what would be the word, we refine, and this space from 700 to 1,000 has the opportunity to be somewhat mapped more,
Yes,
right?
yes, yes.
As it becomes more explored, it becomes you can then map
Mm-hmm.
it some more and be like, oh, what's going on here, right? We can like, oh, well, beyond this, there's this thing of peace here, and beyond this are these things, right? Or perhaps, um, I like there's a sort of a framework or model of personality understanding called the gene keys that
Mm-hmm. Yes,
I
very nice,
enjoy.
very nice. Yeah.
And perhaps, at these stages, what happens is just the activation and embodiment of our city qualities and frequencies. And so, enlightenment, someone's gonna map it and be like, oh, it's just boundlessness, which just happened. That's my I wonderfully created myself as someone where boundlessness is my life's work,
Mm-hmm.
which I was going to put it very, very bluntly. But you would say that, real boundlessness usually really tends to freak people out. It's a frightening proposition for the mind, for the tethered mind to come into contact with.
Yes, because it has lost control, quote unquote, the control.
I mean, there's no
Nothing.
bound.
No,
I mean, it's
it's
there's
whatever it is.
also a, how do we say, something of a challenge of this term, because it's framed in
Mm-hmm.
terms of something that is not, right.
Yes, yes.
And I also in my gene key, it's because when in the book he talks about like how boundlessness is the partner of timelessness.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, oh, brilliant! That's the next, literally the next one in my chart, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they're both termed in terms of what they're not. Perhaps because again, it just becomes in this quality of isness, it becomes impossible to say what they are.
Yeah.
Perhaps they can only be lived rather than things. Perhaps it might be the realm of poetry. Anyway, to come back to Ramaji's Book of 1,000, he basically just didn't agree with Hawkins.
Mm.
And what he observed was that um, different individuals from particularly his particular focus is on him what do? You get enlightened and you write a book
Yeah.
in order to then get people to become enlightened through your teachings, right?
Yeah, yeah.
There was, at one point I considered writing the book, now that I'm enlightened, how do I get people? And the straightforward, the formula answer to that is you write a book that declaring that you're now enlightened. That's the traditional path. So I haven't, obviously, because why do anything traditionally?
Yeah.
And what he did was essentially, he he mapped the levels of integration and consciousness of different teachers, and how different teachers, they all map around certain levels when they're teaching
Yeah.
certain things.
Yeah.
So for instance, the in the high 700s of consciousness, there are people like Scott Killaby and Byron Katie, who became, had this enlightening experience, went through certain things. I mean, I know someone who was good friends with Byron Katie, and one of their issues with them was what you teach is not what you did.
Mm, mm,
And what you
mm.
did was you had this like
And
this
like,
thing, and then you felt your way through all of this stuff, and then you had this appearance, and then you came up with a method.
mm-hmm,
But
mm-hmm,
the coming up with a method, making it about the method
mm-hmm,
than the teacher, right, is the quality that literally every single teacher who has been defined as being around the high 700s, like every single one does this. Which is fascinating, it's fascinating. I mean, I found his book and the things in there really fascinating in terms of um like where people are,
mm-hmm,
where they stabilize, and why it's so unlikely that once one starts teaching that any further evolution will happen.
mm-hmm. Okay. Because,
Because in order to get from, say, if this is a thing, right, but if you order to go from the 700s, right, to like the pinnacle of consciousness of 1000, whatever that, we can leave aside whatever that might be,
yeah.
but to go there, well, you have to abandon your work.
Mm-hmm, yeah. What keeps you here
Yeah.
with your mind? Yeah.
Well, I mean, however much mind is there. I mean, people, I mean, there are many people who say that Byron Katie's work and her workshops are among the most powerful things that they've ever experienced.
Mm.
So it's
Okay.
definitely, there's no critique of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there still would be, she would have to, in order to like move, she'd have to like quit
Mm-hmm.
and move the whole thing on. But obviously what we have is we have the she leads the workshop. She now has, I believe, there's a whole raft of people who are now trained to teach
Mm.
her teachings, and
Mm.
these teachings go on and they help people move from wherever they are to somewhere else.
Yeah.
And that all, again, it's I think I definitely like the premise that everybody is teaching and doing from where is most useful for the whole. But that's a very difficult one to get when if you're currently engaged in practices that appear to be harmful.
Mm.
A very easy one to get in, like, oh, it's very easy to apply this to the world of like spiritual teachers
Mm-hmm.
who are helping people, free their minds and their consciousness and or have healthier bodies. But that's the real challenge of it's all one consciousness is that we have to be in agreement that we therefore accept everything, all of the hate and the war and the violence is all me too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the biggest challenges to really accept and to go through is to admit how much we like that.
How much we like all this chaos.
the drama, the
The
violence,
drama and the card.
separation, the
Mm.
poverty, the hunger, the anger,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
the things, the all stuff. You know, like the movie. Ever watched a movie where it started off happily ever after and then just carried on?
Mm, mm,
No, because it bombed at the cinema. Nobody wanted to watch it.
But that's what I say. I say when people say, "Did you see?" And I don't have social media. Or, well, I don't. I have LinkedIn, but I don't scroll. I'm LinkedIn,
Sure.
but I always say, "Why are you watching that?" No, because the poor girl. Why are you watching that? Can you do something for her? If you can, good. If not, why are you watching that? No, how the poor girl. Why are you consuming those type of things? Because
Yeah,
it's not
because
going good for her or for
well,
them, and you
it's
don't
going
get
well for
anything.
them. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But
But
yes,
we
yes, you're
enjoy the
right.
show.
Mm.
We love it, and that's fine, right? So the issue is not necessarily that you love violence or
Mm-mm.
that you love war. The issue is we can't accept that about ourselves.
Mhm. Mm.
And some now I think the the juiciest places are looking for the things that we don't like and then finding ways to admit our secret enjoyment and our secret pleasure of them. Because that's then how they become less interesting.
Mhm. Mhm.
Because everyone who, if we are critiquing war or hunger
Yes.
or any of these things, we're in the game,
Yeah, we're playing the game. It's
playing the
energy.
game.
Yeah, it's energy.
And I think that is to me that is absolutely acceptable when you are engaged in action around resolving those things.
Mhm.
But for the most part, for most people, most of the time, that's really not what's going on. Right? It's like coming home. It's the difference between coming home to your partner and complaining about the meal that you had in the restaurant that you thought was terrible and complaining to the waiter so that you can get a different meal
Mhm. Mhm.
or a refund or whatever
Mhm.
you want. You if you're that then it's not a really it's a complaint to make
Yeah.
to take action, and that has a different resonance to just our enjoyment and moaning.
Mhm. But yes, that brings me to, I think it relates to one of your last articles, and let's say not playing in the system. And for me, what I've unlearned is actually not just observing, but not playing in the system.
Uh-huh.
So really keeping it parallel, knowing it's happening, but not putting any energy there because I'm not going to. Well, it's because it doesn't interest me, that game, anymore.
Yeah,
So I play outside that game. I play my game with people that are like me, like-hearted people,
sure.
to reinforce what we are co-creating outside of this game.
Yeah. And I think that is even the framing there
Mm-hmm.
is something I think to start being really caring with.
Mm-hmm.
Because when we say again when we say something like we are creating outside of the system,
We're already considering the
well, it's just
system.
the emphasis of the sentence is on the
Yes.
system, is
Yes.
on creating.
Yes. True.
And I think it's a really big challenge
Mm-hmm.
to then not have that as like the reference point.
Yes.
like we're building an alternative to the system,
No.
but the system is then we're just building and we're creating. In fact, maybe that might be it, right?
Yeah,
You know what I
yeah, we
mean?
are co-creating through who we are and
Yeah,
what we create. We are co-creating
yeah.
in yours from through
Or,
we are
or,
what we
or,
create.
or my favorite thing is just simply to, we create what we love, to create what we
Mm-hmm.
love.
Yeah,
And then we
yes.
we we ask the question of, well, what would we love? And then
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
an action comes to and in that um in that methodology, which I very much enjoy and appreciate its
Mm-hmm.
power. We use the current reality as a reference point to unhook from. So there's a structure that I use that I share with people in terms of creating like for people raising funding, creating pitch decks, or for general storytelling is your vision, current reality, and then the bridge.
Mm-hmm.
Because what most people do
Mm-hmm.
now is they start with the current reality, and then like kind of a bridge, and then to try and get people to where they want to go. But what you don't really want to do is get people thinking about
Yeah,
problems
no, no, not at all.
or scare them. It's like this
No.
deck. You'd be like, we're creating this beautiful project. Like, one of my clients just creating a conscious reality game show around
Mm-hmm.
creation.
Mm-hmm.
And what was I doing? And what you don't want to, it'd be very easy to be like, well, the world is bleak.
Yeah,
Because
no problem.
you're passing this to like investors and you're putting them into a kind of state of like fear to
Mm-hmm.
all these problems. And as soon as you're in the problem mind anyway,
Yeah.
right? The first thing I do if I'm in my rational mind and someone presents a deck, I look for reasons why I can kill it immediately. Right? I look for what most investors do most of the time. They get all these decks and they look for reasons to get rid of it.
Mm-hmm.
They look for reasons not to invest.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's an art of getting people into a state and a frequency where they are a little more open to what it is you're presenting. To
Mm-hmm.
present them a world,
Yes.
not an idea.
Yes.
And then you can demonstrate how the products you're creating are keys to unlock this world
Beautiful. Yeah.
rather than just products to sell
Yeah.
that solve problems.
Yeah. No, it's beautiful. I love that because I always say it's so important to have a vision and walking towards the vision with who you are and what you love to create, no? But so in what you are teaching, I love that because it's changing the perception. It's really saying, okay, and to the investors, no, this is the vision. This is how the vision gets fulfilled. So it's positivity,
Yeah,
open, and then well, yes, what it is, no? But it's really like you were saying, I love that, putting them into the mindset of positivity, of the vision of over there and not in the black hole of the problem.
absolutely.
Yeah, it changes everything. Yes.
Absolutely. Because I would say one, the most powerful, again, if we're talking about it's living from
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
power. And in living from true power, that's what you want to communicate
Yeah, express.
and express. You want to give people a taste of that
Yes.
as though you are preparing, unless you're giving them a dining, 5-star dining experience where everything that they taste is
Yes, they have to experience it.
this exquisite flavor.
Yeah.
And apparently it's also the most effective for actually raising the money. So,
Yeah, I imagine, because it's a completely
for
different.
getting meetings, the thing that is the most effective is not the solve the problem that I'm solving or whatever. It's a communication of this is my vision for life and this is who I am.
Yes, I
And
love
that
that.
is in these days much more likely to get you the meetings and the things that you want rather than rather than presenting the problem that you solve and all the capabilities and the things that people have, they get that all the time. It's not
Yeah,
interesting. They want to know. People more and more are interested in, tell me who you are,
yeah, I love
tell me
that.
what you stand for, tell me what you're creating, and if those things are um interesting and potent enough, then you're someone I want to meet.
I love that. I remember now, but when I started the social enterprise I had, 2012, it was different. It was like you were saying, tell me the problem. And I always said, what about the person behind the project and the vision the person has? That's the most important thing, not the problem I'm solving, because the problem I'm solving is it's also going to be a static problem, and I will be evolving, and I will be driving the company to continuously evolving in towards a vision, not stuck in the problem.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
yes, beautiful.
you're,
Happy to hear that.
totally from the point of view of business, it's your character and capability to be able to bring your vision into reality.
Yes, yes.
Do you seem like the kind of person who is going to be able to do that or not?
Yeah.
That's that's the
Uh,
thing.
Very nice change. I'm very happy to hear that the world has evolved and people like you, me, have opened, I would say, this possibility.
Yeah, it seems as though these uh, doors are open.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you so much, Anthony, for co-creating with me here today, now, with who you are and what you create with love.
Well, thank you.